It was a salt lick auction, and they had all of these wonderful salt lick blocks that they called them artists, and they auctioned them off.
Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Food, Wine, and Travel Show, where we go across country and travel the world with members of the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association. Let's go.
So, welcome everyone. Every third Monday, every second Tuesday, every second Friday, we get to chat with members from the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association. We call it IFWTWA, and you can go to their website, IFWTWA.org. And today we get to chat with Cindy Ladage. And did I say that right?
Ladage, close.
Ladage. See, I don't know why. I have it in my head, but there it is, Ladage, everybody. This is our spelling and pronunciation class today. No, Cindy is so awesome because she really focuses her travel writing on farm adventures. In fact, her website and blog is called Traveling Adventures of a Farmgirl.com. So go check it out. She does a lot in the Midwest, but really all over. I mean, she's been to like up in Baker, Oregon, which I have been through, but I did not know there is a salt licking competition, a salt lick competition, but there is salt licking involved. And this story is in her new book that is out now, and the links are all in the episode notes. For her new book. It is called True Farm Girl Adventures, and go to her website to learn more. So, welcome, Cindy. How are you?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, let's get to salt licking. Come on now, that's a story.
It was a salt lick auction, and they had all of these wonderful salt lick blocks that are like they use for different types of livestock, and they auctioned these, and they called them artists. So they had all different types of artists that licked these salt lick blocks, and they auctioned them off for Parkinson.
But these were the livestock licking them, and
Yeah,
then
they were, and they even though had from deer, they had from cattle, and and all the way to down like rabbits and goats and deer. So they had a variety, and then they had a few that some artists, human artists had created, but most of them were just from salt lick blocks that livestock used for the salt purposes. And the gentleman came up with the idea of auctioning these off for to raise money for Parkinson's disease, which I thought was such a unique story. I've never seen anything like it before or since.
no, I know. And that's what's so interesting about doing this. And you're really showing small town America while you're doing it. But you're also, I think what's really cool about your book is, which is really a collection of your blogs and stories, right? From
Yeah,
your years going to farms and farm country, basically in
yeah,
America, is that you show community. That seems to be like a thread that goes throughout of how communities, what their identity is through farming and agriculture. And then, of course, there's even some, Hollywood history in here. Somebody driving it. Yeah, let's George Jones is in there. There's some things in here that surprised me, but it's really about how it shapes communities, and then how the community shapes the community and rallies together for all kinds of things.
true. That's true. This book is a compilation of blogs and different farm adventures that I've written. I write for Antique Tractor magazines and have had the opportunity over the years to go to a lot of tractor shows and interview a lot of interesting people, and it's just been a joy to be able to profile people that I have met over the years.
So, okay, tell us a little bit how you got into the world of farm adventures.
Okay, I got into that because I married a farmer who happens to like old iron. And he started going to antique tractor shows, and I was doing other things. And before long, I found that he was going one way and I was going another. And I thought, this is crazy. I'm going to at least try to join him. And there was a gentleman named Kurt Onman who started a magazine called The Belt Pulley. And I've always wanted to write. And Kurt gave me the opportunity to go ahead and write in his magazine that he had started. And I found that I loved writing about people's machinery. You'd get stories like, what happened to grandpa's tractor, and there's a lot of searching, and somebody can have a collection and they can have the rarest tractor in the world, but the one that they honor the most always comes back to the one that was grandpa's or Uncle Sam's that got away and they were able to buy it back, or they've just had it in the family all these years. So these pieces of machinery are more than just a hunk of metal. It's memories, the memories and stories that are attached to them.
Well, when you find these pieces of equipment, they all have names. It's
You're
even when
right.
I think about like in Kansas and Pittsburgh, they have big Brutus, and that's a mining thing.
Yeah, but that was just an amazing piece of machinery. It is so cool to go up, and you can actually go to the museum and you can go up in Big Brutus. It is the largest piece of equipment like this of its kind. And it is so cool that they have actually saved it. And you can go and, like I said, sit up in it, and it can almost feel like you're driving it. And they have a mine museum that kind of talks about it and how it was built and what it did in the
Hmm.
in Kansas, and how this type of mining worked.
And how important do you think, getting people to be aware about, farm life to find out where their food comes from? And have you seen like a lot of farms have to like spread the word of this, come to the farm and see the apples? This is, we need to have more tourism connections with agriculture, and it is getting better. I know you talk about ag ventures and I think that's really, I think farmers are doing more and more of that from what I see.
There is I think there's a lot more of a movement where people wanna know where their food has come from, and there is real opportunities for farmers that are open to having people come to their places where they live and work, and, and show farming's not just it's not just a job, it's a way of life, and the people love the animals and they love the machinery, and it's a very special way to live.
Now, I do want to ask you about, well, James Dean. See, but we don't even think like George Jones, James Dean is in there. You wouldn't think that they're, going from Hollywood and the music stage, that they come from this really, rural background, this agricultural
Yes.
background. So I think you're really doing good on shaping the stories of people, even those who are not famous.
Well, thank you. Yeah, James Dean, that was just such a fun we'd we'd been driving past, and I told my husband, I said, "Fairmont, I really wanna stop in Fairmont, Indiana, and see the information about James Dean." And when we went into this stopped at this place that was profiling James Dean, and I saw this picture of him next to a tractor, and we got talking to the owner, and he said, "Oh, yeah, his cousin Marcus lives right over here, and they still have the tractors." And I actually got to go and interview Marcus and learn about James Dean, and we had stopped at the James Dean stops there in town where he grew up, after his mom had passed away. He lived with his cousin and his aunt and uncle and literally grew up on the farm, and there was a book where he came back to the farm, and a lot of pictures were taken there, and that's really how a lot of this information got out about the farm and where he grew up.
Oh, wow, amazing, huh? So
Yeah,
you
it
never know what
really
you're going to
is.
stumble about, but you got there, and did you get lost? I hear that you kind of get like we are, where we get lost, and
Yes,
and actually in agricultural country you can, because sometimes you're like driving through orchards, and you know what I mean. You can get lost, and so
you can. My husband tells me that I'm directionally dyslexic. My maiden name was Disquay, and he calls me Wrong Way Disquay. However, going on the back roads, my friend Rose that I actually donate, I actually, she is who I dedicated this book to. She's passed, but she went with me on many adventures where we would always say, it's not a wrong turn. You just see new sights. So it might have taken us a little longer, but you would find many stops along the way that you would not have found if you didn't take that turn. I do get out a map and I do look, but the problem isn't on the highway. It's when I get off the highway. It's like I don't have, It's like, "Don't tell me turn east, tell me turn at the big oak tree with"
Yeah, don't say northeast, southwest. No, the compass doesn't work for me either.
No, no, it
We
doesn't.
better never go on a road trip together. We'll never get anywhere. Now, what about the actual cooking of produce? Do you like to do that? Of actually the recipes inside of that, or do you really prefer the experience?
I do both. I don't know that I'm the best cook in the world, but I do have a lot of fun. I know I was sent this Route 66 cookbook to review for my blog, and it's funny because I had a holiday guide that I put together, and a friend of mine, Danelle Gay, saw that, and she had done the same thing, and she goes, "This Route 66 cookbook, we should go on a Route 66 trip." And next thing I know, we're leaving July 11th, and I'm going from Illinois all the way to Santa Monica. So I've cooked one of those recipes on there, and I plan on trying more along the way. So yeah.
Awesome. So you're doing well from Illinois side. Yeah, Route
Yeah,
66.
we're actually gonna go the whole trip, so it should be a whole new experience.
Well, it's a centennial year, and that's the other thing. When people are road tripping, I encourage them, don't you think, to look at what you're doing in regards to agriculture. Go to farms while you're
Yes.
road tripping.
Yes, and also don't discount the small historic museums. It's
Yeah.
amazing what history because almost every place was rural at one time, and most of us have a grandparent or an uncle or somebody that actually was on the farm, and there are all these small manufacturing companies that were really the backbone of rural America, and you can find those stories in these small museums. I just stopped at the Stevenson County Museum in Freeport, Illinois, a couple weeks ago after being up in Baraboo at the Amazing Circus World Museum. And that's another thing. You would never guess all the agricultural aspects of the circus. That was something I just wrote about
Wow.
for Farm World. But you just this small town of Freeport, arcade toys. There's all these things that were manufactured and that began, in this one town. So you just don't know how much history there is. I know in the book I wrote about Galesburg, about, some of the different one of the early George Brown planters was created in Galesburg. It's just there's so much history right in our own backyards and in the small town America.
I agree. I agree. There's, people like George Washington Carver. I have to still go to his birthplace because of, he was the peanut man.
Yes.
He's the
Yes.
one who taught everybody all these things we could do with peanuts, and it really changed America with
That's true. That's true. And
it,
it's so easy to forget this history too and forget where our roots really came from.
so you're into roots, whether it's fruit, vegetables, or people.
Yeah, you're so right.
So how many states do you think you've been to?
That's a good question. I really am not sure. I'd say I've probably been to half of them.
Mm.
There's a
And
I've got
yeah.
a lot of holes in the Northeast, and I've got some holes out west. I've really done well with the South, and I've really done well with the Midwest. But I need to get kind of like they say, go west, young man. I really need to go west, young lady. So I'm looking forward to doing that with the Route 66 drive because there's a lot of new sites to see along the way. I've been to
Absolutely.
California, but I haven't driven, and seen all the stops between here and there. Or I've seen just small portions. I'm going to the Red Power Roundup in June. It's an international harvester event, and I'm going to Huron, South Dakota, and I'm looking forward to that.
Wow.
My first outing in the Dakotas, so I'm looking forward to that.
Do you find it interesting going from like this antique equipment, like the antique tractors? There was in Vista, California, in San Diego, there was this antique tractor museum, and they have a parade of these tractors. And they do one in Tulare County, out of Tulare itself at the fairgrounds, these antique, you know, parades, and even some of the old airplanes. I mean, that includes like old crop dusters and things like that. But when you look at these antiques and they're so like it's interesting to go to what we have now in farm equipment and how farms have changed, how growing is using, they use AI now to, see how their water is doing and in pest control. I mean, it's really changed. Is that something you've watched, over the years doing the adventures and and going to these museums?
I have, and to Laura, you mentioned that. That's really on my bucket list too.
When
Yes.
you go, call me because I'll hook you up.
Oh, I would love that so much. Thank you. Yes, my husband actually is a farmer and he just retired this year. And I was a small town girl and I had never lived on a farm. So I had no idea, like I said, that it's not just a career, it's a way of life until I married a farmer and just just in that we've been married 46 years and
Oh, wow.
just in the years that we've been married, things have changed so dramatically. It just, the equipment has got bigger. And so yes, it's day and night to go. And everybody might enjoy just going to come the dead winter months. They have a lot of farm shows where you can go and you can see some of the new equipment and they talk about you can stop just at different vendor booths and see equipment and learn about them and it's real eye-opening, really whether you're into farming or not. It's just kind of fun to go and to see how far we've come and I guess that and in some ways we went back to because I think sometimes farming it's going to such a large scale, but then you're also going small scale with some of the specialty farming. So I see that
Yeah.
too. It's fun to go to some of the specialty crop shows and I'm always fascinated. We grew corn and soybeans, during our farming life. My husband just fully
Mm.
retired this last year and we love to travel and see cotton growing and tobacco growing and see different types of farming and farming has so many aspects, kind of like I talk about in the book, like mining. Mining, it was its own type of farming.
Yeah.
To go to British Columbia and see a salmon farm. And, there's shrimp farms. There's farming in a million different ways. And
Mhm.
I'm fascinated with all aspects of it.
I know a musician who's on our show, Misha Shellhaus, and he's an amazing guitarist and from Europe, and he lives out in Southern California now, and he does coral farming.
Coral. Oh my. How fascinating.
So people use it for their fish tanks and things like that instead of harvesting it from the wild.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
it's really fascinating because he has to have the temperatures right for the water and all, anything moves or does this, you're going to kill the coral. And
Oh, wow.
I mean, so you're really right about looking at farming and, and the responsibility that goes with it. It's like, and what farmers go through. The story of America really is tied when we look at America 250, the backbone we got to give to farmers too.
Yeah, yeah, we do. And, no farm, no food, and it's just like you said, almost everyone you go back into history and almost everyone was tied to the soil in some way or another.
Yeah. Water.
Talking industry or whether you're talking people that actually tilled the soil, the first manufacturers were the industrialists that created the equipment to
Hmm.
farms.
Well, they say, civilization or becoming civil from going from caveman to non-caveman kind of thing was the work of farming. As soon as
Yeah,
we started to learn how to like raise animals and grow our own crops instead of being hunter-gatherers, that's where civilization changed as we know it into what it is today.
true. It really allowed us to be able to go ahead and form communities that were permanent, not temporary sites.
Yeah, no, what has amazed us as traveling on the Love Your Parks tour is a lot of national parks actually have farming history within them.
They do.
And that was something I remember going like, I want to do a story on houses in parks because there's cabins. There's like, in Sequoia National Park, which is in Tulare in California, Central California, the breadbasket. Sequoia National Park, you go up about an hour and a half to get into where the giant sequoia trees are. And there's this one area called Paradise. Oh, it's Crescent Meadow. I call it Paradise. But anyway, Crescent Meadow is just gorgeous. And they have this old fallen down sequoia tree, which is massive. I've actually walked on top of a
Oh
sequoia tree.
my.
It's insane. I mean, they're the largest living thing we have on the planet by volume. Anyway, this tree, probably lightning or something, but it's hollowed out. And Hale Tharp used to live in this tree when he was grazing his cattle in this meadow. This was before it was a national park kind of thing. But I think it just the protections are different. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But I was like, well, this ties to the people of the community. And so you see things like that in some parks like Bandelier National Monument in New Mexico. they show you how they did waffle gardens. The indigenous people grew waffle gardens, and these indigenous people lived inside the rocks, inside the
Wow.
caves. They were dwellers, cave dwellers. And these waffle gardens are amazing because it works with how the water is and shows how they purify the water and how the water goes through all these different systems. It's really cool. We have farming in our parks all over. There's old,
Yeah,
I've been to a bicentennial farm in Natchitoches, Louisiana. There's just, it's cool.
it is. It's fascinating. You find it everywhere, and that is so on my list. I really wanna get to see the redwoods, and that's fascinated me since I was a kid. There always is this sequoia tree that they have at least they have had it over the last few years, sometimes, like, they'll have it at different events, like the state fair where you can walk through it, and that's always fascinated me, thinking of somebody living in a redwood tree, it's and that's something else that fascinates me too. I love to stay in unique lodging opportunities, and there's so many different places that you can do that, from bed and breakfast to I know Kansas really does that well. They have tree houses and ranches and different places that you can stay, and that also is a whole different way of farming too, using the nature to spend time in.
Also, there's a lot of farm stays too.
Yes,
You
yes.
know, I was looking at Hip Camp, and there's just people can stay on farms across America. As like you can bring your camper, you can pitch a tent. Some of them have built like little cabins on their properties. You
Yeah,
know, that's a whole other thing, you know?
you're right. You're right, that's true.
Wow. There's just all these different ways, but you mentioned state fairs. So do you go to fairs like as soon as you see a state fair, are you making a beeline towards it?
I do enjoy the state fairs. I also really like the smaller ones too. I like a lot of festivals, to go to festivals, and I know I'm gonna go to Napanee, Indiana this year and go to their apple festival, and I'm looking forward to covering that event. There's just something to find in the different small towns. I never went to this Italian festival that was just in, not too far from where I live, in a town called Beneld, and I saw this amazing Russian Orthodox church that's now a monastery, and I was like, "How did that happen?" Well, these Russian miners came over to Illinois to mine, and they built this amazing church that was unlike anything you usually see on the Midwestern plains. So it's just by going to some of these small towns and small venues, it's always surprising, what you can find.
Mm, I know. I love that you've been on a part of the Jefferson Highway. We talked about
Yeah.
that before recording here about that historic highway goes from Winnipeg to New Orleans, and it was, created by, Edwin Meredith, who ran and published Better Homes and Gardens, and he knew those farmers needed to have extra income through tourism and all kinds of things. So, I mean, that was at the beginning, like we just started driving cars outside of our communities. It was the beginning of road tripping at that point. It's
Yeah, no,
amazing.
that's fascinating. Yes, the Jefferson Highway, and I was just in Richmond, Indiana, and covering a little bit about the national highway there, and that's pretty fascinating.
Oh yeah.
These different routes just fascinate me and all the stories behind them.
And farming is part of it. I mean, the Jefferson Highway, I mean, it was really going, part of it was like the Chisholm Trail and how cattle were going from Canada and in America. So there was like these cattle trails
Yes,
too. So that
yeah,
goes back into some farming too.
it
And
does.
what about dude ranching? Have you been on a dude ranch?
No, the closest I've been was I was on a ranch in Kansas and got to stay at this woman's ranch that had been in her family for several years, and that's really the closest I've come. We got to go out, she took us out in her side by side, and I got to see these wonderful, majestic, longhorned cattle. You had to
Oh, I love
keep your
them.
distance, but they were just, really quite amazing, how far out their horns could go, and I've got to go to, like, bison ranches. I've never got to stay on a bison ranch, but I've got to go out and see bison ranches, and, so I've got to do a little bit of that, but I would love to do a dude ranch and do a do a trail ride. I went to a winery and got to stay in a covered wagon, and we got to go on a horse trail there, and that was a lot of fun. So there's all
Well,
kinds of adventures out there, and the more varied, the better.
like the Salt Lick. That is
Yeah.
still blows
I
my mind. I was like, "What you talking about, Cindy?"
I know. It
And
is.
Baker, who knows where Baker, Oregon is? I do because I've been there, like through there a lot. But people don't, really know maybe where Baker is because we just think Oregon, Portland, and
Yeah.
those areas. It's so I love that you're showcasing these smaller destinations too.
I love that. I love the back roads and I love the small towns and I was so thrilled to get to go to Baker City, Oregon. I actually flew into Boise and that was really probably my first real solo trip. I ended up renting a car and then driving there and getting to go to that auction and I got to ride on a steam train out there and got to go to do a little bit of pan mining. And it was one of the most amazing trips I've ever had. It was so varied and it's just so beautiful. And the cattle, they have open range out there. And it was so neat because you just have to stop because you're going on this mountain road and then there's a couple cattle going across the road. You just have to stop and wait for them. So it's and that, I guess, is an example there of farming being different from, the fenced
Mhm.
in areas. So, if
Yeah.
you really to see America, you have to get out and go if you're wanting to see what different parts because every corner is not the same. Cultures are different. Food is different. I
Hmm.
love to try the different foods in the different places. I went to a Southern Travelers conference in down in New Orleans this last spring, and it was amazing. I tried crawfish for the first time. I'd never had a crawfish boil, so it's just fun to try the different foods and the
Hmm.
different and taste the different spices and variations.
Well, I'm glad that you're part of the International Food Wine Travel Writers Association because you're getting right to the heart of it. There's no wine without grape growers and all of
Yeah,
that good stuff. So, I think this
that's
is a
true.
really good pairing for you. But they're having their conference in Milwaukee this year in October. So everyone check that out. But that's going to be cool because I know there's cheese curds involved.
And you can't go wrong with cheese curds. You are
No,
so
no. Are you going to the conference?
I am hoping to. It
Oh,
it I'm hoping to.
that would be cool. That it's not too far from you.
No, no, it's not.
No, and that's the other part. I mean, the Midwest, I think so. I really tell people it's like put it on your list of destinations. And I think Midwesterners will travel within the Midwest, but
Yes.
go from California to the Midwest. There it is beautiful. The Midwest is gorgeous. Now, winter comes, that's a whole other beauty in my mind. And well, I
It
had to
is.
learn about your winters, but in Illinois, there's Lake Champlain. Well, there's a forest out there. It was winter, it was January, and there were all
Okay.
these ice crystals on
Oh,
trees.
yes.
And I was like, the snow was intense. And I learned how to snow shovel too. But there's this beauty that is completely different than what you would experience. And I've been through snow in other parts of the country. But I mean, it was just magical.
It is. It really is. That's one of the things of the Midwest is the changing of the seasons. There's no beauty greater than the colors, God's palette in the fall, changing the leaves
Mm,
to gold and then in the spring, there's a park not well, it's kind of a garden not too far from me called Lincoln Memorial Gardens, and it was developed by a famous landscape architect. Why am I having a brain? I'm sorry, I'm having a brain freeze on the name, but it's a beautiful place and all the trees and there's all
mm.
Lincoln history there and it's just a lovely place and there's the colors of the flowers and the colors of the leaves and you're right, winter has its own stark beauty. The sky's never bluer and when you have I call it kind of horse frost, when you have
Yeah,
just everything is just outlined in ice and is just like a painter, you know.
that's when you need
Look
your
crispy.
toddies. You get to have a hot toddy.
Yes, yes. Sometimes that beauty's better looking it from the inside out, but if you can if you can maneuver it, it's really quite lovely.
It is. It is beautiful. Well, now, are you going to be doing any book signings or, how do people get your book? I know it's out in print now, and, when this airs, it might be out on Amazon. So I encourage people to go to your website. True Farm Girl Adventures is the name of the book, but you can go to travelingadventuresofafarmgirl.com, again, linked in the episode notes. But how is the best way for people to get the book?
Right now, it is available through me, and I am going to be having some book signings. I'm going to be at the Historic Farm Days. I will be setting up there one day having a book signing, and I'll be in Huron, South Dakota having a book signing. And I will also have it with me. I have a new book coming out in October,
Oh,
Unique Eats and Eateries of Illinois with Carrie Steinweg, and that'll be out October 1st, and we'll be doing numerous signings all throughout Illinois, talking about all the good places to eat. And I'm hoping to be able to bring True Farm Girl Adventures and some of my other books along as well.
ooh, how many books do you have?
Currently, that are currently in print. I've had like 6 over the years, but some of the publishers are no longer around.
Sure.
So I do have right now. I have Farm Girl Adventures, which is a short story collection, and it was published by House of Honor. And you can find that on you can get it from my website, or else you can find it also on Amazon. And then I have the True Farm Girl Adventures, and then I'll have Unique Eats and Eateries of Illinois come this fall.
Awesome, awesome.
Mm.
So the best thing is everyone go to your website from there. And then what's your favorite social media outlet for people to follow?
Uh, Probably my blog is where you can find the most. You can also find a lot just on. I try to post a lot on my Facebook page. Whether you go to my one under Cindy Ladage or else Traveling Adventures of a Farm Girl, I've also got, and I'm also on Instagram as well.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been fun talking farms. And
Thank
now
you so much, Lisa.
I want to go pick an apple for some reason. There's nothing like a fresh apple right off the tree.
There is not. Fresh apples, fresh berries,
Oh,
fresh
and we're getting to plum season too.
yum.
Yeah, we do say yum for plums, huh?
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio's Food, Wine, and Travel Show, featuring members of the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association. We encourage you to visit their website. We say IFWTWA, which is IFWTWA.org. You can also follow us at bigblendradio.com. Happy travels, everyone!